Stand for prayer.
Thank you, O God, for this day that you have granted unto us. As we come to be about the business of the county, we ask you to lead us and guide us in the way that we should go. It's in your name we pray and we say amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion for consideration of March minutes.
I move the minutes be approved as presented.
I'll second.
It's moved and properly second. All in favor?
Who was that seconded? I'm sorry, was that you? Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so it is. Motion to open public hearing.
So move.
Second.
It's motion and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
So it is. Utah Construction.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Reed Nunley. I'm an attorney at Butler Snow. I haven't had the opportunity to be in front of you before, so thank you for having me. I'm representing Utah Construction in connection with their application for rezoning of some property in the county from A1 to C2. And so indulge me for a second just to give you a little bit of background about the company. They've been in operation for almost 50 years. They've, over those almost 50 years, experienced tremendous growth and prosperity, now having over 400 employees. And they have a corporate headquarters in Gluckstadt that they've just simply outgrown. They're looking for new space to sort of have some elbow room and expand, and they've identified this site as the perfect location for their needs. Among other things, the improved infrastructure that's available, the proximity to the interstate, making it an attractive site for them. And clearly over the past 20 years, but even less than that, just 2 to 5 years, the area has changed a lot. I mean, Nissan obviously brought a lot of change, but we've also seen Amazon and Clark Beverage, to name a couple in the county, and then others like Merit Health and Southern Sky and the Mississippi State Extension have all come in recent years, and allowing a nice first-class office building fits squarely within the county's long-term goals and its comprehensive plan. I understand there was a hearing in March. I was not here for that hearing, but there was a little bit of opposition to the proposed rezoning, and I'm certainly not here to explain all of the opposition, but in brief points, I'll name a few things that I understand were the opposition. So one was sort of the land use and sights and sounds that come along with a construction company. I think that was just a misunderstanding. It's not going to be a lay-down yard or used to store heavy equipment. It's an office building. So I think we've alleviated that concern. Another concern was some of the what I would call permitting issues, like stormwater, what's going to happen with the stormwater out there, or an increased load on the electric grid. All of those are related to the permitting that the company will get. They're not really zoning issues. That'll all be fleshed out when they apply for their permitting. Another concern had to deal with flooding, and there's a creek that runs through this property, and so some of the adjacent landowners were concerned about what the impact on that creek would be and some flooding issues. Again, they're going to get all the permitting they need from the county and DEQ to have a permitted site. And then finally, I think the last opposition related to use of a road that runs up from the south end of the property, Hawkins-Tompkins Lane. The company's not using that as an access road. They're going to build their own access road that comes in off of the west end. So I think the most important thing to consider is, obviously the character of this area has changed. It's not going to be ag land forever. I think we all would recognize that. The city's land use plan contemplates that at one point, it would be used for light industrial, and the company's use as a quiet office is less impactful than an industrial site. And I don't know that that's been emphasized heavily enough, but an office building is certainly going to have less of an impact than like a manufacturing plant would. So in the spirit of good faith, the company actually met with some of the adjacent homeowners as early as this week and to alleviate some of their concerns, and actually have a couple of them in attendance if any of you have questions for them. So in conclusion, I would just say in the past 40 years, the company's been a responsible and contributing member of their community, and it does need to relocate somewhere. So we hope that's in Madison County, so we would respectfully request that the commission grant its application.
Have any questions? We hear from opposition.
Good, how are you?
Good, very good. My name is Montel Thompson, and I am in opposition of the rezoning. And I kind of like David fighting Goliath here. But we've talked to Utah Construction, and they was very good with us, and they had talked to us about some of the things that they're going to be doing. And I explained to them that I had a bad taste in my mouth for rezoning, because I'm staying on a road right now that has been rezoned back in the years. And what has happened is that the rezoning part of it is permanent. Once it becomes rezoned, it's nothing else to turn it around or make it into a residential again. And what my road was not, my street, the road that I stay on, was not equipped for commercial use, but it was rezoned to put some Lamar signs on the highway for you can see it from the highway. And so the rezoning committee, not y'all, probably back in the day, rezoned it at that particular time. And now I'm having an issue with some of the construction traffic that has completely destroyed my road and now the person that bought the property, he was explaining to us that it was going to be a residential area, but it's not. It's not residential. He was going to talk. He was talking. He even brought some chickens out there. Shook my hand and said, "Oh, y'all going to have some new neighbors." That was not true. All right. So what we have now, we have a makeshift sawmill that's bringing in logs that, Madison County has a whole lot of dead trees around in Madison County area that they need to dispose of. And so the company that disposing of this, they're bringing it to our road. They bring it to that commercial property that's been set up over on the side. So my argument is not with Utah. No. It's with the rezoning. It's the rezoning part of it that makes it so impossible to have your peace and quiet that a lot of y'all might be, but this whole, everything about right now is about having your life like it used to be. And by commercializing it, it changes that. And so we're right now, what I am against is having it so just in case, might not never happen in my lifetime, but just in case, Utah say, well, here's somebody that's from the mega site or from Clark's Brewery or from this data center, because Amazon is not the data center. The data center is, the Amazon are making it money on Amazon. It's going to make that money off the data center. And so that's where all of the profit and all the things are going to come in at. So they're looking at the future. And so that's what I'm here for. I'm looking at the future. And so just in case they did not decide that, okay, I want to get rid of this, Utah say, oh, no, I don't want to have this no more. Let me sell it. And so they put it on the market, and its value is so ridiculously high. They say, I can't hold on to this no more. I mean, I need to make some money off of it because I've invested money into it. And so it's all about money. You know, it's about how much you're going to invest into this property to get it. Because, you know, if it was the other way around, in my thinking, if someone said, give me triple what it costs to do it, I would sell it. Or you know, it's a no-brainer. And so what I'm looking at right now, I would like for the committee to just take this into heart, because this is my backyard. It's nobody's here. Or Utah, they explained to us that they have been in Madison County. They've been in Madison County all their lives. They've gone to public schools. They explain all of this. It's very good. But they are not having to fight a rezoning in their backyard. And I am. And so that's what I'm dealing with right now, and that's what I'm pleading to y'all right now. That's what I'm explaining to you right now, because I'm looking into the future. And just in case they don't want it, what if it's somebody else like that just came down on the other side of my road, said, okay, I want to build something that's not, you know, maybe like I repeated to them, a chicken plant, or put something there that's just you just can't live beside. And what if that happens and they don't have no more control over the property? All the promises they made to us is void because someone else is in that position now. And that's what I'm dealing with on the other side of me right now. Somebody else is in that position. And so please, ma'am, please, sir, I'm asking y'all just to take this into consideration, because what we have here now is a change that is going to affect our whole community, even though a lot of us is not here. And I feel like I'm the only one right here now speaking against it, but we have a lot of opposition that has been here before. And I would like to just be able to state my case on that particular point. What if it was your backyard? What if it was your backyard?
Would you like to address that?
Yeah, if you don't. Yeah, we're certainly sympathetic to the homeowners and the fact that the neighborhood has changed, okay? And we understand that. What we would say is, if you look at the city's land use plan, it contemplates that this area would one day be used for an industrial use. We're asking it to be rezoned for something that has less of an impact than what the county has envisioned in the future. So we are sympathetic to, you know, their arguments, but this will have less of a long-term impact than a manufacturing plant like a chicken plant or whatever.
Any other opposition? I'll entertain a motion.
I have some questions. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Your land abuts this parcel that we're talking about.
Yes, it does.
There's a tree line there. About how wide is that tree line between your property and
The tree line is no more than probably about, I'd say about maybe like 10 feet.
10 feet?
Yes.
And then it's open land?
And then it's open land. It's just grown up now because it used to be a pasture.
I have a question for Etai. You have this track, right now you're going to develop track 1 and track 3.
That's correct.
And what are your plans for track 2?
We currently don't have any plans. I mean, part of the rationale for requesting that it be rezoned is just because it makes sense to us to do it all in one application. We're buying that whole site, so it made sense to us instead of coming back later just to get it all done in one proceeding.
In case we ever wanted to, should we need to expand
name?
or anything like that, we're just doing one.
Your name?
Oh, Rob White with Utah. Sorry about that. So we figured just get it all zoned commercial, you know, from the road frontage back to where our property would be in one application.
You don't perceive track 2 as an equipment yard?
No, we have an equipment yard in Aberdeen, Mississippi that's been there since we started 40 years ago. Not going anywhere. That's where all our heavy equipment goes. We're that we're pretty much an accounting office. We do construction, but this is all project managers, about probably 20 passenger vehicles a day on average. I mean, right now, we're right across from Wendy's in Gluckstadt. I'll get close to the mic. And, I mean, I'm sure y'all have driven by there and see we just have, passenger vehicles parked there and some trailers in a little yard out behind there, so.
Why are you choosing to locate the office in track 3, not track 2?
To get off the road, to be further from, to be centralized there, so we're not affecting the landowners and stuff. Obviously, it'll cost us substantially more money to build a road from Old Jackson Road all the way to there, but we're willing to make the investment because we want to be right there in the middle where we're not disturbing everyone around us. We like peace and quiet. We've been on the corner right there across from Wendy's in Gluckstadt for, I guess, about 5 years now. And we like some room to be able to move around and the quiet.
Could I say one more thing? Okay. You're done?
Sure.
Okay. All righty. What I want to say too is you brought up a very good point, and that's what my concern was too, was that you had you coming off of like a half an acre to put your office building Utah on 60 or 90 acre area, and my issue is that why? What purpose was it to move it so far back if it wasn't just for leaving that extra room in the front for some other place to come in later on? They told me they wasn't into real estate, which, I could say that they're not. But when it comes down to selling off portions, because the area is growing, as the attorney said, that the area is growing, and it's growing financially. And so, Amazon had a whole lot to do with that. And so by it's growing financially, that property, being commercial already, is going to even up the price of that particular property now from where it used to be into what now. So because see, all of my stuff is hypothetical. And if they decide they want to separate some of that land in front, and they still have people, they still can, you can sell this area. You can sell those properties at a higher cost than what you bought it for, and profit a steady roll in. And so that was one of my issues, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it was, why move so far back? Why build an extra road? Why build across a creek that goes across the property to make over to that point? Why go that far? Why come across a floodplain to get that far back for peace and quiet? I've had peace and quiet for a while, and now I'm here talking to y'all. And so it seemed like their peace and quiet and my peace and quiet is a little bit different, because of the fact that it's a commercial company. It's not a residential man that's standing in a peace and quiet spot with a pastor next to him. And it makes I'm trying to separate the differences between peace and quiet. I'm done.
I've got just one thing to say. That is the property to the north it was a 180 acre parcel. It got split into 90 acre parcels with through the will, I think, from someone passing away, air property. The property to the north is actively being listed and sold, or trying to be sold. The guy that we're purchasing the property from, we had a personal relationship with, and came to us and said, "Hey, we know you're looking for an office property. You have the opportunity. We'll sell to you." So the family that own these properties are actively looking to sell them to people for at commercial prices. So our point is, we feel like we, being a local company, being from here, are a better option to come here than somebody flying out of New York and trying to buy this property to build something that's not going to have near as much consideration for our neighbors. So just wanted to.
Any more questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to move forward. Yep.
that a motion to approve?
It is. Mm-hmm.
I would like to put some stipulations on that zoning.
All that is in place already, the zoning and stuff.
I would like to amend her motion to put some,
Go ahead.
all right. I would like to see a.
Wait a minute, Mandy, why don't you withdraw your motion, Gene, if you're gonna make a different one with your stipulations? Would that be okay with you?
I withdraw.
Discussion to see if she would like to amend it. Can we have,
Sure. Second for discussion then, please.
I'll second.
You second for discussion, all right.
all right, I would like to see that motion amended to provide a definite buffer zone of at least 50 feet between this residential area and this commercial area. And that the, buffer zone be further enhanced by either a fence, an 8-foot fence, or evergreens and, that, are a minimum of 8 feet in height. And that, let's see. I would like for that buffer zone, those trees to be, part of the site plan that will be presented to this board. And that an landscape architect be consulted to provide enough foliage in that area to completely buffer the commercial from the residential area.
Is there a second to that motion?
We're gonna call that a substitute motion, Gene, if that's okay, because we already had one on the floor that was seconded. Now you've made a substitute motion with those amendments.
So we have a motion and a second. Accept
Now,
it without the
You have a
stipulation.
substitute motion on the floor now. In order to move forward on that, you need a second from somebody.
That is, okay.
That's your
Yeah, we need a
I
second
made
to
a
your motion.
substitute motion.
Yeah. Do we have a second to the substitute motion?
I'll second her
Okay.
motion. Yes.
It has been motioned and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. So it is.
May I just ask a brief question? Commissioner McCarty, you mentioned either an 8-foot fence or evergreen trees that are 8 feet tall?
At least 8 feet tall.
Right.
And canopy would be wide enough. Both of the trees would, you have a buffer now with some trees. They are not any specific trees that I can determine.
It's natural.
Natural buffer zone. That buffer zone, and he says it's about 20 feet or 10
10
It's
feet.
about, it's no more than 10 feet.
10 feet,
And
I'm
most of
saying
them is on my property.
a 50-foot. Now, the tree line, I'm not saying that you need 50 feet of trees, the whole length of the property. I'm saying a line of trees as a buffer zone or a fence between the commercial and the residential.
Okay, either would work.
At least 8 feet tall.
Gene, I think you've got on side and rear yards where they abut in a residential district in a C2, there's already a 50-foot requirement which shall remain open and be landscaped, or 20 feet which shall remain open and be landscaped, and a fence approved by the zoning administrator alongside and rear yards. The difference in this and your motion that I'm hearing is that you want at least a 50-foot buffer that is landscaped, as you say, with the trees, or 50 feet and a fence. That's right? 50 feet either way, but either a fence or landscaping. That, I was just clarifying. I'm not trying to correct, I'm just clarifying what you said.
And I'm also clarifying, it's not 50 feet of constant trees, it is a line of trees.
Correct.
Or a fence.
Well, we need to be specific on the landscaping, because if you read the definition, landscaping is very broad. It can just be grass, it can be rock, so.
Make it a little more specific.
Yeah. And I think she said, if landscaping, then you wanted evergreen trees at least 8 feet tall.
Feet tall with with a canopy that will camouflage and literally buffer this area. Now, if you have the trees and the fence, you do not have to have landscaping, shrubbery and such in the 50 feet. Is that, are we clear on that?
Well, that's what Scott, I think that's what Scott's saying, is that the definition of landscaping is extremely broad. But I think, I just want to make sure that it's clear to everybody what you're saying is that 50.
Fence, it's 20 feet with a fence, right?
Correct.
All right, let's do it that way. 20 feet with fence, 50 feet with the trees.
I think that's what the C2 requires anyway. Am I right, Scott? Are you hearing me?
Right.
Yeah, so
Yep.
as long as they comply with C2, I think they're good,
Right.
if I'm
Okay.
hearing you right.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Chad Phillips.
Good morning. Thank y'all for having us today. I am Crystal Gardner Phillips. I am owner-operator of the Oaks Residence, and this is my husband and business partner, James Chad Phillips, also owner and operator of the Oaks Residence, or the Oaks Luxury Assisted Living Residence. And today actually marks a year since we initially submitted our application to MLHPD. So I know y'all are very familiar with the Oaks, and the first time we were here, we received a unanimous approval. And the second time we were here, we received an approval subject to MLHPD findings. So we figured it would be most appropriate today to focus on those findings and provide some more information, kind of clarifying some of those statements. And I know also, but before I will start with just a brief introduction of the Oaks. As depicted in the Oaks revised plans, it is designed to look and feel like a beautiful Southern Greek Revival home. The Oaks will be located within the Livingston Township PUD on 5 acres of property currently zoned C1. A copy of the warranty deed and description of the 5-acre parcel are attached in the initial submission as Exhibits 3 and 4. The underlying C1 commercial designation of the Oaks property specifically permits public or quasi-public facilities and utilities in compliance with Section 402 of this ordinance. The uses that are permitted outright in the PUD districts are subject to regulations and restrictions as prescribed in the initial zone over which PUD is superimposed. Section 2705 states that public or quasi-public facilities or utilities may be considered for location in PUD district in compliance with Section 402 of this ordinance. The Oaks application is not for residential use, nor do we have any rental agreements, as previously clarified. The property is zoned as a PUD superimposed over a C1 general commercial use designation. The Oaks application is for personal care assisted living facility, which is clearly permitted as a conditional use for a public quasi facility in a C1 district in all districts in the county. And then just a little summary of what some of the things that makes the Oaks unique. The Oaks is a level 5 luxury assisted living, providing exceptional senior care in an upscale environment. At the Oaks, each senior is celebrated for their talents and interests. From the enrichment and social calendar to the delectable menu, daily life is designed to reflect the preferences of our residents. With only 15 residents and a higher than average caregiver ratio, the Oaks tailors each care plan to accommodate individual preferences in a safe environment. This leads to a happier senior, pleased families, and an overall positive environment. A sampling of our available programs include fitness and stretching classes, gardening, speakers, cooking classes, and arts and crafts, games, group walks, and more. So at this point, we have prepared we took the findings of the MLHPD, which were quite lengthy, and we summed it down to the main objections and concerns that they had, and we are prepared to present some more information, just clarifying the information and those concerns.
I'm gonna just pass out a brief of their findings directly from what they submitted, along with our rebuttal, if y'all would, that way y'all can follow along.
Thank you.
Please, the commission, I would submit the opposition's entitled to a copy of anything.
I gave it to the group, and it's gonna be part of the official record.
If you would, please identify who the group.
To the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Thank you.
Would you like me to wait until Scott gets back, or?
I would, thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like y'all are having an opportunity to read ahead a little bit, which is great. You can familiarize with it. But basically what I would like to discuss are the 11 findings of the MLHPD that they use to make their decision to deny our project. Number one, the proposed usage is not allowed in the district. The Phillips proposed to initially build 15-bed luxury assisted living. Section 1903 expressly prohibits apartments, residential condominiums, hotels, motels, and boarding houses. It further goes on to state its prohibited item are not all-inclusive. All their uses may be deemed inappropriate. This next phrase is very concerning to me. The clear intent is to prevent group living quarters within the Mansdale-Livingston Heritage Preservation District. The entire district, not just my property. The Mansdale-Livingston Heritage Preservation District allows residential housing for those who can live independently. The individuals we serve are disabled and can no longer live safely on their own. Therefore, they require services provided by an assisted living facility. It is important that we treat the elderly disabled individuals fairly. Denying this conditional use permit based on the stated intent, their intent, the district, which is a very beautiful building. And I appreciate their insight into helping it look as such. The building that the proposed is rectangular in shape and very modern. That is just not correct. To say that the building in front of you today is modern does not align with any architectural individual that would say, is this a modern design? No, it is not. Most buildings in the Livingston area are rectangular in shape. Ours is a U shape because when you actually look on the site plan, you can see it forms a U with a courtyard in the middle of it in the back portion. MLHPD goes on to say that that our windows on the side facing Livingston consist of 2 small windows. If you go to the next page, you can see our side elevation has 1, 2, 3, 4 windows, 2 doors, and those are not small windows. We have added transoms above the windows, have divided light. Not 2 windows, 4 windows. MLHPD, and you can see like the existing buildings that are in Livingston directly and the windows that we have. The next was the objection to the roofing material. Roofing material other than flat roofing is in Livingston and Cedar Shake. This denial is the first time of hearing anything about the roof preference, as this was not a previous requested with other revisions. Our roof type is selected by matching existing roof types in Livingston. Livingston Fellowship, pictured, is architectural shingles. And then the Greater Livingston Missionary Baptist Church is a 3-tab shingle, which is in the area direct to us. So we are consistent with the roofing material in Livingston. The proposed use is incompatible with current uses. Number 4 from MLHPD. We are aware of 2 conditional use buildings in the Livingston development. The Livingston Fellowship and Greater Livingston Missionary Baptist Church fall into this category because churches are a conditional use that is allowed in every zoning district in the county. Personally, we are very familiar with Livingston. We bring our children out there all the time to gatherings. We find Livingston to be an area where all ages enjoy life together. Tucked away on the back of the property, which our building is, the Oaks enjoys privacy and the proximity to businesses and community for our elder ones to enjoy. Number 5, the documents originally submitted by the Phillips depicted 5 buildings on the 5-acre parcel. If approved, this would authorize the Phillips to build 4 additional buildings on the site without seeking additional approval from Planning and Zoning, MLHPD, and the Board of Supervisors. It seems the statement is misunderstanding by the MLHPD with the Madison County ordinances, reference 805, 808, 811, y'all know them all. As it states, at any time on record shown in our renderings, we have to have plans for other buildings. We are not seeking for other buildings. We are seeking a conditional use permit for our property and 1 building. If we were to want to add additional buildings, whether it be retail on the front or whatever you have, we would have to resubmit to MLHPD for those buildings with site plans for them, come to y'all, and to the Board of Supervisors for approval. 6, other deficiencies exist in the documentation. Additional concerns were raised regarding provision of electricity and site and necessary installation of transformers. We have met every standard under the Madison County zoning ordinance, and every requirement of MLHPD has made us. We submitted the required topography map as requested, and it's on the site plan, and it went to the MLHPD committee. We submitted all required documents. A transformer is not an issue for our development. Culverts that they said were not shown on the site plan are shown on the site plan, and we're waiting on Bear Creek to get back to us on the fire hydrants that was a concern, which I've already spoken to them. They will be one, but they have to figure out where they want to place them, so I can't show them. 7, confusion still remains in regard to the use requested. The Phillips initially clarified the property as a luxury assisted living. It's pretty obvious that what we're asking for is and we've stated multiple times, that we're applying for a conditional use permit and a certificate of appropriateness for a personal care home assisted living. And there was a clerical error that was made on the certificate of appropriateness, and I offered to correct that in real time in the last meeting, and they denied me to do that. Confusion still exists what kind of type of services in which the residents of the facility may be charged. The Phillips advised MLHPD Commission residents facility would be charged rent. The only charges are for services. And then Mr. Bob Germany produced a document showing assignment of rents to secure payment and indebtedness. The Oaks will only be providing necessary services for the elderly disabled seniors in our community as defined by the state of Mississippi. And it lists medication administration, medication assistance, and then these are the definitions from the state health department, and then personal care, and y'all can read that at your leisure. But personal care shall mean the assistance rendered by personnel of the facility to residents in performing one or more of the activities of daily life, including but not limited to bathing, walking, excretory functions, feeding, personal grooming, dressing, and so forth. Bob Germany is an outside attorney who stated misinformation that the MLHPD utilized to deny us. This document is a loan document from our financial institution. We have 2 entities. One owns the property in the facility. One is an operations LLC. The assignment of rents is for the bank. The operations pays rent to the holdings, the property ownership company. If for whatever reason they see fit, the rents from the operation company to the property company, that is what can be taken by the bank, not rents from our residents. It was very clear that MLHPD may have been misled. The MLHPD committee also considered other factors presented by the Phillips. This one is numerous individuals commented about there's a waiting list. And it's very true. There is a waiting list in many places. They talk about the bed needs, St. Catherine's. We invested in a marketing study by Health Trust, which confirmed the need for more assisted living in our area, demographics to support it. This reflects several waiting lists and is confirmed last week when I personally called them. Multiple individuals argued that it would be a luxury facility. Mr. Phillips described the rooms of occupants. The Oaks, like my wife already read, is a level 5 assisted providing exceptional care for seniors, upscale environment. It is. When you look at a 100-bed facility versus our 15-bed facility, we have the ability to customize and have a personalized approach to the care that these individuals will receive. Mr. Phillips stated that he would be at the facility every day as a sounding board. Unskilled help would be available to the residents. I'm a registered nurse. The state of Mississippi Health Department requires assisted living facilities to have a nurse present for 4 hours every single day. I am the hired skilled nurse. We are qualified. I am very qualified. I am highly skilled. I've spent the last 10 years of my life working in level 1 trauma ICUs. You name it, I've done it in nursing. To say that I'm not highly skilled, nor my staff would be, is not appropriate. These are the definitions from the minimal standards from the Mississippi State Health Department. Other personnel, it lists it all. You have to have training. You have to be certified. You shall have a nurse on premises 8 hours every single day. For instance, when a resident's unable to self-administer prescribed medication, a nurse must be present to do so. All nursing activities must comply with the State Board of Nursing regulations. D, Mr. Phillips explained at length his employment history and his passion. I am very passionate about this project. That is very true. E, Mr. Phillips and his attorney initiated that the MLHPD Commission and its members do not like or were attempting to discriminate against elderly individuals. I never said that they are. What I did, however, imply was that the denying of housing for disabled individuals based on a discriminatory fears of the public would be discriminatory. And there's a joint statement by the U.S. Department of Justice and Housing and Urban Development that support that. Number 10, the Phillips has stated throughout their review that a national organization, REL Academy, is easily researched and is part of what they're doing. That's true. REL Academy is an industry-leading local, industry-leading network of residential assisted living facilities. We make a yearly investment to be part of this network, which allows our team to learn, share the latest best practices in the assisted living world. REL also provides our team of professional development, which assists in providing exceptional care. Number 11 is an article from the Real Estate Appraisal Institute that shows houses located within half a mile of assisted living facilities lose value. This article states that nursing homes near older population acts as an asset to the community because older individuals want to age in place and the families desire their older loved ones to remain nearby, as stated by the article submitted by the MLHPD. The discussions and conclusion have come directly from their own article. As the U.S. population ages, the demand for group homes for seniors is likely to grow. Although the majority of Americans would prefer to age in place in their current homes, Those who do move into a more supportive housing, often want to remain in the same geographical area. They would prefer to move locally, and hence they can retain their friendships as well as relationships with doctors and professionals. This is backed up by the Health Trust. 85% of the individuals that are going to live in our facility come within 15 miles of the facility, and there just are not options for that in this rural area of Madison County. It goes on to state, in a youth-oriented culture, people may not perceive themselves as belonging in a neighborhood with frail, older people, sometimes with diminished cognitive abilities, use walkers and wheelchairs to navigate the sidewalks. This would explain the negative influence of senior facilities on house prices and the strong influence in neighborhood housing more younger residents. It could also contribute to the stronger influence of nursing homes. Ageism is a societal problem that is difficult to combat on the local level. If communities use zoning to exclude group homes for elderly residents from residential neighborhoods, developers are forced to locate to commercial zones, which we are in a commercial zone, where higher land prices put an upward pressure on the cost of housing and care, or else to locate them in green fields that do not provide connections to the residents, to the broader community, and contributes to the sprawl, Loftman and Landon. Nursing homes are already restricted mostly to multifamily and commercial zoning districts. That's their own article. With that being said, if there's anything that we have not already covered, we are not legally allowed for one reason or another, which I don't believe there is anything, the Oaks request for a reasonable accommodation. To the extent the county disagrees that the use fits within the does not fit within the definition of public, quasi-public facility, we do want to make the point that the intended residents of this home are older adults with one or more disabilities and are considered disabled as defined by federal law. The people who will live in this home will have a variety of disabilities, such as problems with vision, hearing, mobility. They will need assisted living because their disabilities substantially interfere with major life activities, like being able to live independently, dress, bathing, toileting, cooking, or needs with help with medication administration. The home will provide a safe environment with the supportive services they need. Because their disabilities, our intended residents come within the protection of the Federal Fair Housing Act and Americans with Disability Act. What this means, firstly, is that they cannot be discriminated against. In this case, there seems to be no dispute that a convalescent home, rest home or nursing home, is allowed in this zone. The definition of convalescent home refers to nursing services, but the Madison County Planning and Zoning Commission correctly determined that the definition is broad enough to apply to assisted living homes, which provide an intermediate level of care. This is the most logical and non-discriminatory interpretation of the code. Otherwise, the code would favor people with certain disabilities over those with other types of disabilities. Namely, people with disabilities severe enough to require nursing care would be allowed to live in this zone, while other people that only required assisted living would not. This would make no sense, as not allowed under federal law. Second, even if a rule is not discriminatory on its face, there are times when local zoning authorities must make a reasonable accommodation in rules, policies, practices, services, when accommodations may be necessary to afford persons with equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. To the extent that the definition of convalescent home is not seen as included of assisted living, we request that the county grant a reasonable accommodation under the Federal Fair Housing Act and ADA so as to include assisted living in public public/quasi-public facility. In this case, the requested accommodation is entirely reasonable. It is well within the types of public versus quasi-public facilities that are allowed in this zone. It will be designed to match the scale and architecture of the zone. There is nothing to indicate that it will have any greater impact on surrounding community than any other public, quasi-public facility would. And in fact, it will bring numerous benefits to the community. The requested accommodation is necessary. Otherwise, the disabled residents who would benefit from this home would not be given that opportunity. Did y'all have any questions or?
Any questions?
I have a couple questions. You said fairness to the elderly. Would you say that it's fair to have them in a place that's probably going to be loud music late at night, and how have you made accommodations for that?
So one good thing about our contractor is he does a lot of development on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and with that, you have hurricanes. With that comes a substantial need to insulate a building. That insulation will be in place for this building.
Thank you.
I have some questions.
Sure.
And I'm probably gonna pivot between you and Andy because I just want some overreaching guidance on this. I have some random notes, so just bear with me. In the overlay district's notes, and you've already discussed it today, the Board of Supervisors had charged them with resolving these issues. And they mentioned that under Article 1900 of the Madison County zoning ordinance, they couldn't approve. So I just want specific language on that 1900 article to begin with.
Yeah, MLHPD, Article 1900 is just the overall section of the ordinance that encompasses the MLHPD Commission.
We can't get any more specific than that.
Yeah, there's numerous sections within that Article 1900. I mean, you've got 1901 is uses permitted, you know, and so on and so forth, conditional uses and that's just where they're located in the ordinances, section 1900. Now, if you're asking about specific use, like they mentioned prohibition of hotels and apartment complexes and condominiums and all that type of thing, that's true. I have already given, back in August of last year, I think, memorandum opinion to the MLHPD, and it's a part of this, where it's my opinion that assisted living facility is none of those things. It is not an apartment complex. It is not a condominium. It is permitted as a conditional use in any district as an assisted living facility in a commercial district, which is what this is. That's what they're asking for. It's a conditional use for in a C1 commercial district. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? Oh, sorry. So, I mean, does that, I've got the memo that I previously wrote that's in here.
No, I just wanted a good reminder. And so the zoning does allow for overnight rentals.
In not overnight rentals, that's not what this is. This is, as I said, an assisted living facility inside of a C1 commercial district. This is not apartments, this is not condominiums. My opinions, I'm certain that there are people out here that have differing opinions on that, but as your counsel, that is my opinion. I've put it in writing, and it's out there that I do not believe this to be any of those things.
And we don't have any, I mean, that's not hanging anymore. We've established that, and that was established in November, right?
Yeah, I mean, you approved it based on that, correct?
One primary difference to kind of make sense of, you know, this is not any of those things. So with a rental agreement or a hotel stay, there's what? There's a start date and there's an end date. There is no, like in our agreement to provide services to the elderly, it's more like, it could be more compared to like a hospital. You know, you need these services, this is what we charge per month. There is no end date until you no longer need those services. There's no start and end.
Awesome. So one question I have to that point is, are they signing any sort of agreement that they are going to stay for a minimum time, or they can go in and leave whenever they choose?
No, they can go in and leave whenever they choose. We would just say if they stayed for 15 days out of the first month and say, I'm not feeling this, I would prorate their monthly charge for just 15 days.
I'm sorry, you go ahead. I can
I
just
have
do
another
them.
question. Reading the state law on assisted living, there are quite a few regulations. But in one of those regulations, it talks about admission agreement. Your admission agreement, is it to provide an apartment or to provide services?
Strictly services. They don't have one designated room or another. If they choose to move one day and the room is available, they can certainly do so.
It also talks about that the people who are being cared for is patients. Are your people patients or residents?
They're residents of the assisted living facility. I couldn't tell you the state definition of a patient, but I know they would be a resident in our facility.
And I know this has been in front of us, I think we're going on 3 times now, if I'm not mistaken. And I did ask a question last time, and you brought it up again today, and I just want to clarify one more time. And it's in the documentation. And the opposition, one of their points was that the documents originally submitted by you guys depicted 5 buildings on the 5-acre parcel. And one of the last couple of times we were together, I'd have to go back and figure out, you know, which time I'd asked, but I asked if you had any plans for a second building or anything further for that land, and you told me no.
That is correct. We have plans for this one building. We did draw up initially for visual purposes just to show how the future could potentially be used for more retail development, shops, restaurants, etc. on the front of the land. We do not need the front of the land per se. We enjoy the back of the land being tucked away, the privacy. So that rendering was strictly just to show what could possibly fit on the front of the land, but we do not have plans for another building at this time.
And the question of it having to come back in front of us, should they decide to do that, will you clarify that for me too?
Yeah, a couple of things there. So, the only thing that is in front of you today for approval is the conditional use and the site plan for this facility only. In the event that they did want to, I hate to even put the terms out there because I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, but I'm just strictly speculating. If they wanted to subdivide, or if they even wanted to put an additional building on their property, yes, they have to bring that site plan back in front of you all for approval. And the use, you have to get the use approved as well. So use and site plan for anything other than what you're approving today. There was also a question, and this may be what you're asking too. God forbid this gets approved and, well, I shouldn't say God forbid gets approved. If this gets approved and then God forbid they go out of business or there's some other change and somebody wants to buy this property and turn it into a restaurant or a arcade or I don't know, just anything, ridiculous examples, whatever you want to put out there. That has to come back for approval. They're not automatically approved for a different use other than what they are submitting to you today. Does that make sense?
It
Is that
does.
responsive?
It does.
Okay.
And I've got one more question. And it's from the documentation that you guys just provided, number 6, and it mentions the other deficiencies exist in the documents and plans submitted by the Phillips. That the Phillips have also not presented a grading plan. I know you covered that. But one thing that just stuck out to me, and I just wanted to ask, there were additional concerns raised regarding the provision of electricity to the site. And they had mentioned that sometimes Entergy could take up to 130 weeks, I believe it was. Have you guys addressed that with Entergy? I mean, is there a hard plan there?
We have electrical poles on our site, and there is a transformer that is already in place above the sewage lift station that we have direct access to through a legal easement. Our contractor, because I'm not a builder, I don't do the electrical work, I don't do the plumbing work, I take care of the older disabled individuals. He has done an extremely large amount of commercial development in this area and throughout the entire state of Mississippi. He says this is not an issue for us at this time.
So we don't have, you can't tell me that he's talked to Entergy directly, you can just tell me that he's done this before.
I cannot tell you that he has talked to Entergy directly on our behalf, but he does not see it as a problem at this time.
Okay.
All right, under the state law, will you be licensed as a medical facility?
We would be licensed and regulated as a personal care home assisted living facility.
That comes under
The Mississippi State,
medical facilities with the state of Mississippi?
I believe so, yes.
One more question.
It falls under the State Department of Health, which spells out every type of care home, which ours is personal care home assisted living within the State Department of Health.
All right, we'll hear from the opposition.
Good morning. My name is Bob Germany. I'm a lawyer in Madison. I also happen to drive back and forth to work through the overlay district every day. And unfortunately, many times that includes Saturday and Sunday. So I am well familiar with the area. This is a map.
Hang on, Bob. Does that mic work? I want to make sure we can hear you on the video.
Thank you. This is a map that one of my clients prepared. This in the orange is the property at issue. I represent the Greaves family and their trust, and this is their property here. We've labeled that with Bolenbacher and Yamamoto. As the commission may be aware, there's some activity in bankruptcy court, so that may or may not still be true. I know there has been at least one sale so far. But the important part for my purposes is the church and the Greaves family, just to give you some perspective on where they are in relation to the property at issue. So, the Greaves family have been in this part of Madison County going back until at least 1848. Some of their ancestors are buried in the cemetery at the Chapel of the Cross. So they have a long interest in the property and in maintaining its historical value, both the good history and the bad history. I think most historians agree we need to remember both. And we're here today to urge this commission to turn this project down in furtherance of preserving that history. There's almost none left. And I'm sure all of you have driven out 463, and there's a fairly dramatic change once you get to Beagle Bagel. And then as you continue north and you cross Annandale Parkway and Reunion Parkway, it becomes very much rural while there is development. And it continues on to the town of Livingston. And even the people who have developed have tried to go to great lengths to maintain a lot of the history out there. And I'll share some of that with you shortly. Livingston the idea was to create the old county seat. If you look at the buildings, I think they've done a pretty good job of that to this point. And it was also going to be an entertainment and event-driven area, which it has been and continues to be. The two exceptions being the Missionary Baptist Church and the church building that was built on the premises for weddings. At this point, I would like to briefly detour from my presentation, and I'll share copies of this with everyone in a minute, and speak to some of the questions and answers that were just given. Number one, there's some issue apparently about whether this is a residence. I don't understand that. Look at the heading of the document they gave you. Their words, not mine. The Oaks residence. What is a residence? It's not a hospital. It's not a healthcare facility. It's a place you live. It's a place you spend the night. And as pointed out by the preservation, Mansell Livingston Preservation folks in their submission, any efforts to provide housing in that overlay district, specifically at Livingston, have been denied. 2 of them. That's what we in the law business call precedent. Why is precedent important? Consistency. Can people buying property rely on this commission and the board and the district, for that matter, to be consistent in their application of these rules? I learn something every time I go to a trial or a meeting. I learned something today. I can't figure out who these patients, these residents, will be paying their money to. Have we heard that? What company is this money going to? And they raised the point about the assignment of rents. I think that's an important question. What is the chain? If you go on the Secretary of State's website, there are at least 4 different CPOR entities. 2 of them have been mentioned today. One owns the property, one is the operations. Okay. Well, who is here asking that y'all approve this change? Is it operations? Is it the owner of the property? And who do we look to if there's some issues with the way the property is being used? Operations? The owner? I don't know the answer to that. I've not heard an answer to that today. I was accused of misleading Mansdale Livingston Committee. I didn't mislead anybody. I gave them the document. It's in your packet. There was a great question asked about the admission agreement. We've never seen one. What all is being provided through that admission agreement? Well, according to Mr. Phillips, care. Okay, fair enough. It's a residence. Obviously, you're being provided a place to live. And in fact, 15 places to live. And apparently you can just move from room to room. I had not heard that before today. But clearly, part of the money is going for a place to live. And the person deciding whether to stay there or not is the resident. It's not like a hospital where your doctor says, oh, I need to admit you to the hospital. You need some special care. You can't get it on. And then 3 or 4 days later, the doctor says, you're good enough to go home. He's making that decision. Here, it's no different from an apartment, except he says he'll prorate the rent. That may be different. But the resident is the one making the decision whether to live there, just like a renter at an apartment complex. And those type of arrangements have twice been denied in Livingston. What I'm handing out is a notebook that has the slides I'm about to go through with you. Thank you, Tom. And that's going to be sure they'll be a part of the record. Thank you. And we've already talked about where the Greaves property is. That's the same map. All right, so let's start with the deed that puts all of this in motion. This is back in 2007. The Greaves family, through Sunny Place Trust, does a land swap with Chestnut Hill LLC. And this is the deed, the important part of the deed. This conveyance is made subject to the following covenant, that for a period of 50 years from the date of this instrument, all uses and improvements on said 10.81 acre tract will meet the standards of the Mansdale Livingston Heritage Preservation District. That's why that report you have from the folks at the Mansdale Livingston Heritage Preservation, excuse me, is so important. That defines what can be done with this property from that day forward. And why did the Greaves do it? 2 reasons. Protect the history and integrity of their ancestors' property and their property. Number 2, why did they do it? To protect their economic interest in the adjoining property. And we've already heard about the article that says building these care facilities affects home values within a half-mile radius. They're next door. They're not a half a mile away. All right. So, there are some deeds in between. They all, well, they're really not relevant to our discussion today. This one is. This is where the Phillips, this particular company, gets the property, right here. And this is from 2023. And what does the deed have in it? Covenant for meeting standards of the Mansdale Livingston Heritage Preservation District, contained in special warranty deed, August 24, 2007, recorded book 2232 at page 315. That's a restrictive covenant that the lawyer who prepared the deed put in there. The Phillips knew it was there when they bought the property. Subject to the Mansdale Livingston Heritage Preservation District standards.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When was the district established?
I believe 2003. There are some ladies who will speak later that have personal knowledge of that, but I believe that's correct. And that commission has spoken loud and clear by a vote of 7-0 with 1 abstention that this proposal does not meet their standards. And they've given the Board of Supervisors, and I understand it's been provided to this commission, a 275-page document outlining why it does not. And we'll go through some of that in a few minutes. Right. At the first 3 times the Phillips met with the Mansdale Livingston folks, this document had never been provided. That's step 1 in the process. First time it's provided, October 16, 2023. And I don't know, maybe the Phillips can explain this, but you'll see this is the Limited Liability Company Certificate of Formation. This is on the Secretary of State's website. And this is for CPOR REI LLC. And if you will, scroll that down just a tad. That's perfect right there. The Phillips name is not on this document anywhere, even though they signed that last document we were looking at. It's somebody named Lexi Rivers from Murray, Utah, who's identified as an organizer. Well, she works for a law firm in Utah. Seems to me if that's the only name on the Secretary of State's website about this company, maybe she's the one that ought to be signing the papers and appearing in this, before this commission. Let me stop now and say this. I think this commission can stop right now where we are and deny this request based on the deed alone. They have agreed to be subject to the standards of Mansdale Livingston in a legal document filed of record in the Chancery Clerk's office. So, and if you'll notice in the bottom of the page, there's a page number, and that'll correspond with the materials I understand you were provided, the big stack. I believe Mr. Weeks.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
a question.
Sure.
All right, they registered with the Secretary of State under the NAICS code 531390, which is other activities related to real estate.
Yes.
Is there any further explanation of what those other activities related to real estate in the Secretary of State's?
Not that I'm required of, and in my experience, some of those codes are purposely fairly broad. Yes, ma'am.
So the company and this is, the deed was granted to CPOR to this company.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Have you looked at the annual reports to see who the members are of this company?
If you're talking about the annual reports,
Reports.
as far as I know, the current ones no longer require that.
File an annual report.
You do file an annual report. You're not required to identify the members on that report. That's my recollection. Because I filed several on my own businesses. But that's something we can easily check. I think there's been maybe not one filed, because I'm not sure the 1 year is up on it. I think that, do you have the date that company was formed?
April 26th.
Would you like me to clarify?
Yeah, you can respond to it.
Sure.
Crystal's the managing member. Crystal Gardner Phillips. Yes, ma'am. For all the entities that are involved in this today, including the real estate and the operations and the management and the holdings company. It's all Crystal.
And I guess my next question would be, is that filed anywhere of record with the Secretary of State?
I think that may be.
So this goes back to the usage of the property, and I won't belabor that point. I think that the Mansdale-Livingston Commission properly decided that. And let's think about it. You got 15 people living there, paying apparently rent, and also for services. I don't imagine they're giving them a room and a bed and a bathroom for free. Isn't that like an apartment? Here we go to the living quarters we talked about earlier. All applications for living quarters in commercial areas have been denied, both by Mansdale-Livingston and by the Board of Supervisors. All right, there's the picture of their building, or rendering of their building. I'm assuming all of y'all have been to Livingston at some point. I would suggest that doesn't resemble anything out there. Incompatible with current uses. Okay. What do we have in Livingston? We have 2 restaurants, one that's in transition. We have a bar. We have a liquor store. We have a candy and ice cream shop. We have a stockbroker. I believe there may be a haberdasher there. The mercantile store. You can get a haircut. But nobody providing room and board. And in fact, the 2 who've tried to do living quarters have been told no. In Livingston again, the vision, entertainment, and event. What goes on out there? Those 2 things. Weddings. Excuse me. There is a church service at the Missionary Baptist Church. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. The folks from Martin's in Jackson have taken over the gathering, and it's my understanding they intend to bring live music and entertainment. Those are the uses. This has been talked about. I don't know that it's been answered to this commission's satisfaction. My clients are certainly worried about what might happen in the future. They've asked you, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, to have the entire parcel changed to this conditional use. That might mean additional rooms for older people. There's been some talk about a memory care center. I'll let the Mansdale-Livingston folks talk about this. I think we have gotten a little clarification about use. We still don't know, and a good question was asked about the admission agreement. We haven't seen one. We don't know how they're built. We don't know who builds them. We don't know who the money goes to. Who's the admission agreement with? We don't know any of those things. That's like approving an apartment complex and not knowing who the owner is that's getting the rent. I think we got a little clarification on this today. This was the assignment of rents document that Mr. Phillips was talking about. It talks about rents and it talks about tenants. Tenants, not patients. Also gives the bank the right to step in and run the property. May enter and take possession. And let me back up here. And the district, the Mansdale-Livingston Commission folks are more than capable of speaking for themselves. But in my view, they have gone above and beyond giving the Phillips an opportunity to make their case. Just check this on the internet. The focus is how to get in this business and how to make money in this business. I disagree that it's about patient care or resident care. This is the article that talked about the property values. I heard Mr. Phillips make a number of comments about it, but he never disputed the part that says it reduces property values within a half mile. Never disputed that. Never provided any evidence to the contrary. And this is just an example of what my clients are interested in preserving. That's on 463 as you're entering. It's from 1906, the Mansdale Post Office. Can I stop it right there, Shane? This is the sign directing you to the Missionary Baptist Church. And I want you to look at that date. 1856. That's how long that church has been there. And the ancestors of that congregation put together $60, bought that piece of land, and built a church.
ask you a question. There was a time I attended and went to that church, and the other stuff on the corner of 463 and 22 was not there. And I noticed that the Chapel of the Cross, I've seen some of those signs, and that's a little ways down.
Right.
Most time, people at churches, they'll complain about a restaurant, a bar, a gas station, and that sits there. And so if that is sitting there and the church folk didn't come out against that, how would this assisted living affect them?
I think that's a good question, and I'm going to show you. Next slide. Stop it. I know you know what that is.
I do.
For those who may not, that's the cemetery for the church. There are people buried there from the 1800s. I believe I'm correct about that. You see this line right here? That's a ditch. On the other side is where they want to put this nursing home. And I can't speak for everyone, but when I think about going to my ancestors' grave sites, I'm not really interested in looking at a nursing home. I'm interested in paying my respects to the dead. Now, if I'm in a nursing home, I'm not sure I want to be looking at a cemetery. That's not a very positive thought. But as far as actual interference, if you're speaking of traffic, I don't believe there would be any. I think there's enough space there. But it's the history, in my view, that's important. That's all I've got. I appreciate you giving me this chance to speak to you. And if there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
Have any questions? Got no questions.
Thank you.
Why don't we get it, if there's any other opposition out there, and then you can respond to all of those at that time. Let's do it that
Was
way.
there any other opposition?
Andy, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
He had spoke about the admission agreement,
The what?
the admission agreement, and Chad had spoken of it too. I just, for my sake, so I'm doing the right thing here, is that admission agreement part of any consideration that we should be making?
No more than it would be if you were to inquire as to the business plan of a restaurant for a site plan that you were looking at, or any other business as to how they operate their business. The short answer is no. Number one, you're looking at use today, and you're looking at the site plan. Those are the only two things that are in front of you, is a conditional use and a site plan.
Well, I have a question then. So if that's the case and we don't look at the admission agreement, is there an eviction agreement? So say there was a problem with a resident, is that in place, or does that exist?
Those are all private matters. That's how they operate their business, how anybody else out at Livingston operates their business, as to who they lease to, sell services to, sell clothes to, sell drinks to. That's their business. That's
But are
not-
those all conditions of a residential facility that have to be met?
Not for your purposes of review, no. That's why I said those are all private matters as to how an individual runs their day-to-day business. Doesn't have anything to do with the use in the meaning of the zoning ordinance or the site plan.
Can I answer one question?
no annual report
Has been filed.
for this year?
Period. It's only not even a year old yet.
It was defined on, what, April 27th, so that's not a year, correct?
That's correct.
Likewise, I would tell you that doesn't have anything at all to do with your review purposes here today.
Correct. My question was, who was the member, the managing member? I do, and then have not a question, but point of interest. In the admission agreement, which is part of your state law, I believe, no agreement or contract shall be entered into between the licensee and the resident or his responsible agent, which will relieve the licensee of the responsibility for the protection of the person and the personal property of the individual admitted to the licensed facility for care. Telling me that the agreement is for the care of the person and all that goes with it. Point I want to make.
Hi, my name is Lolly Rash. I'm the director of the Mississippi Heritage Trust, and we're a nonprofit organization with a mission to save and renew places meaningful to Mississippians and their history. And I just want to say that you've created a beautiful place, right? A lot of work went into creating that beautiful place on behalf of the Board of Supervisors and the Mansdale-Livingston Heritage Preservation Commission. And when you create a place that has a sense of community and beauty, people are going to want to be there. They're going to live there. They're going to visit there. They're going to want to be a part of it. And that's a good thing. You want to encourage that. But you have to do it under the rules, right? You've established rules, and y'all have all worked very hard to uphold those rules. And so I think it's been proven today that those rules are intact, and that's part of the whole of what makes this place special and valuable. And I would therefore urge you to uphold the Mansdale-Livingston Heritage Preservation Commission's refusal of this project.
Andy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In regards to what you just said for the Preservation District and their covenants and to uphold those rules. So I go back to the first time we heard it, and you guys had denied it. You put forth more, I guess, clarity for them to provide you. And we've heard it over and over again. So again, just to clarify for me, you had mentioned the last time we met that the MLHP provides their recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Committee. It is ultimately up to us to make the decision that it meets the planning and zoning requirements. I just want...
The two committees can differ, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
One's approval is not contingent on the other. In other words, Mansdale-Livingston can deny it, you guys can approve it, and vice versa. MLHPD can approve it, you guys can deny it. The ultimate decision maker is the Board of Supervisors.
Correct. Okay.
We are both recommendation committees to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Good morning. My name's Kevin Watson. I'm not here as a lawyer today. I'm here as an individual. I live at Lake Caroline, and I'm building a home at Chestnut Hill. You've heard Bob Germany say today that Livingston is an event venue, and it is. He's told you what's there. You know, it's got the chapel, it's got the restaurants, it's got a bar, it's got retail establishments. Quite simply, the proposed facility doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood, and it doesn't comply with the zoning ordinances of Madison County. I was here a few months ago when I heard the president of the Board of Supervisors admonish, not direct, not suggest, but admonish the Mansdale Livingston Preservation District to consider this facility. And they did. And you've got that packet. It's 200 and some odd pages long. They did their job. The report found that the facility is not in compliance with the zoning ordinances of Madison County. You know, as I said, there's a restaurant, there's Martin's, there's a Mexican restaurant, there's the Briar Patch, there's the church for weddings, 2 retail stores, a liquor store. It has resort status, so it can stay open later at night than other places can. I urge you, as Bob said, to look at the residential assisted living website, because it's all about the money. 2 things, or some other things that concern me, is this is a 5-acre tract. You know, they're asking for a conditional use for the entire 5 acres. Why do they need it? Well, they won't tell you what they're going to do with the other 4 acres. They wouldn't tell MLHPD what they would do with it. They just said, basically, trust us. We might put some retail out there, but we promise we'll come back to you. I don't think they have to come back to you, though. If you grant a conditional use today for an assisted living facility, I think they can build additional buildings out there that are assisted living facilities.
Is that true, Andy?
No, it's not. They have to bring us a site plan for any facility that they want to build.
They got to bring you a site plan, Andy, and you and I disagree about a lot of this. They got to bring you a site plan, but the barn door is open. You have already approved, if you approve it today, you know, there is precedent, as Bob said, set to approve additional buildings.
An easy fix, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's an easy fix. Should you be inclined to approve, you can approve this and this only, and a condition on the approval would be any further buildings or development on that would come back before the commission.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
You know, it's a boarding house. They're renting rooms. And so it's not even a fancy boarding house. And that's what I told the Board of Supervisors. They provide an 18-year-old to provide skills to dress, bathe, feed, walk. You know, I hear Mr. Phillips say he's a skilled nurse and he's going to be there, required to be there 4 hours a day, but it really is a boarding house. So let's look at the deed the Phillips received. It had a restrictive covenant that required the Phillips to comply with the MLHPD covenants. MLHPD has spoken. I'd submit to you that due to the restrictive covenants, the property doesn't qualify for a conditional use. You know, contrary to your lawyer's opinion, I've got an opinion. It's a boarding house. They're renting rooms, 15 rooms. What's your duty today as the Planning and Zoning Commission? So let's look at what the ordinance says. Let me pull it up here. Section 805.01 says the Planning and Zoning Commission shall not, it's not optional, shall not grant a conditional use unless satisfactory provision and arrangement has been made concerning the following. And it lists a number of items there. Item G is this: general compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the district. I'd submit to you today, ladies and gentlemen, that this assisted living facility is not compatible with adjacent properties and other properties in the district, and there has not been satisfactory provision or arrangements made concerning that. Based upon that section of your ordinance, I think it's your duty, respectfully, to deny the conditional use. I'm not here as a paid lawyer. I'm here as a resident of Madison County who is going to have have a home that's within a mile of this facility. I'm not against assisted living facilities. I'm 68 years old, not hoping to be in one anytime soon, but I understand there's a need for them. It's just not in this district. So I would suggest to you that you should deny the conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. Can I speak just for a few minutes? Thank you. My name is Arnie Greaves. I'm one of the family that we actually traded the property that ended up with the Phillips part of it. And our mother was involved in helping put together the Mansdale-Livingston overlay 20-something years ago. So we were familiar with it. When we traded the property, because we knew the Mansdale-Livingston overlay was an advisory committee which could be overruled by planning and zoning or the Board of Supervisors. So when we did the deed, we took the same language, but we put it in the deed and made it binding as to that piece of property. So just wanted to, and the reason we did that is because I'm a title man, and it was just to clarify. So if things changed with the Mansdale-Livingston overlay down the road, it would not change on our piece of property, and it would basically for our own protection. So I just wanted to let you know why we did that. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Greta Barber Mills. I'm a Graves. I live in Jackson, Mississippi, 817 Arlington Street. And I, along with my sister and brothers, are the adjacent landowners to the Phillips property. And I will not speak long, but I have gathered 400 signatures from Madison County residents around about a 3-mile radius of the Livingston Township that are completely opposed to a personal care facility being built at the township. And I submitted, these have been submitted to the Board of Supervisors in January. This is 2 volumes of hundreds of signatures. I'd like to just let you all look at one of them while I explain, if I can hand this to you.
Thank you.
And just to speak briefly, this is not just a family that is opposed to it. This is business owners and Madison County people from around the area. And what it says when they sign this petition is, by signing the Livingston Springs Corridor Preservation Committee's petition of November 2023, signees are in agreement that they desire to preserve the integrity, beauty, and historical significance of the Livingston Springs Corridor by petitioning the Madison County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to deny the proposal to build a personal care assisted living home at the township. These are the signatures, hundreds of them. And also, just one more thing, if I can bring it up. There's not been, I've been to, I think, 3 Planning and Zoning Commissions and 3 Board of Supervisors meetings. There has not been one person that has stood up in favor of this other than the Phillips and their attorney, not one person. So if this is not upheld, the codes that have been in place to protect this area, the dismantlement begins immediately. So we ask, not just us, but everyone that signed this, that you all continue to protect this area as you have done in the past by denying this proposal. Thank you.
Go ahead.
And this is a question for Greta. In that petition, does it not state that our building could turn into an alcohol and drug rehab facility? Yes, it does. So if anybody were to have that brought to your attention and say, hey, this place is going to turn to alcohol and drug rehab, we don't want that in our area, I'd sign that. But that's not the intended purpose of our facility.
To answer it, the petition does not state that. What it does state is there is a fear that it could turn into something down the road, like a drug or alcohol place. And I am one of those people that has that fear, and I have every reason to fear that. So I didn't state that. I said there's a fear, and there's a fear not just with me, but every one of these signees. Thank you.
It would be the conditional use. So if it was to be approved and something changed, they would have to come back here before that could happen. Is anyone else?
Ma'am, would you like this attached to the minutes?
Oh, yes.
Or do you want it back? Do you also have a copy of the petition that you submitted to people that you would ask them to sign, that you would like?
But you can keep that for later.
Okay, so you don't have the petition? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay.
Y'all ready? Hey, my name is Reed McGuffey, and I have been a member of the Mansdale-Livingston Heritage Preservation Commission for several years, but I have recently rolled off. I was still on the commission when all this was going on, and there are just a couple of things that I want to clear up. We, as MLHPD, we are charged once we send something to you and to the county. We send it through Scott like we're supposed to, and then it is part of county record. And we're supposed to send a letter of findings and recommendations. And what we have been instructed to do is the findings are that Mr. Phillips read out to you. Those were things that were discussed during the meetings. They were things that were presented, they were things that were talked about, they were things that, because MLHPD are the eyes and the ears on the ground to give y'all and the Board of Supervisors information as far as what this project is and to go forward with it because it's attached for the remainder. Then you get down to the recommendations part. And as far as basing what we did, there's on page 2 of the big thing that we did, says on our recommendations, it has 4 things listed. And I want to read one out to you that I think is especially important. It's because it is a use that is either expressly or by implication prohibited in an overlay zone where more restrictive standards shall apply. And the verbiage on that you can find in the zoning ordinance for Madison County in the definitions. And this is on page 96 of the 250-page document. I'll read it out to you. An overlay zone, a zoning district that is superimposed over more than one base zoning district and is intended to protect certain features and buildings. Where standards of the overlay zone and base zoning district are different, the more restrictive standards shall apply. And that was very important to us. Thank you.
If I can turn in the petition like you asked, I'd like to. Again, I did not state this would become a drug and alcohol rehab. What I said in the petition was that local residents fear that it may become, and I am one of those.
Thanks for clarifying. I just noticed that it said by signing this petition, and there's not a petition that speaks to that. Okay, thank you. I'll take that, I'll put that with it. Thank you.
That it?
I think Crystal's got a couple of comments she was wanting to.
Oh, okay. And right before she speak, the lady directed us to page 2, and the word uses there says group housing. And I guess it's a play on words, assisted living service, group housing, you know. It's a little different there.
So we'll start with the most recent comment, the petition. You know, you try to prepare for everything in real estate, everything you can prepare for within the ordinances. What we did not prepare for was to have to dispute rumors that we were something that we're not, you know. So that petition was put out there on a Saturday. I remember seeing it, just shocked that this was getting out. I was getting texts about, you know, what is this petition? We created a letter, and I can see the Reunion Facebook page. We created a letter in response, very eloquently written, explaining what this is, you know, combating those false rumors. The petition got no, comments. I think everyone I spoke to was just confused about it, hearing what we're actually bringing and then what this petition said. And then we posted a letter that explained what we are, which is, you know, all the information that you have as well. And we received nothing but positive comment after comment after comment. This is great. Also, this has been a year. We have not, you know, invited tons of people to every meeting, but I can tell you there have been over 40 people who have attended in support of the Oaks at various meetings, including many of the MLHPD meetings. There were 2 meetings I can recall that, I mean, the chapel was packed with supporters. Some people who I did not even know who have taken interest in our project since it's been going on for so long and in the news and all those things. So we certainly do have a lot of support. And you could check those, you know, names as well on the sign-in sheet of the MLHPD meetings. MLHPD is, you know, held to certain standards and have a reason for existence. And one thing that I wanted to point out is MLHPD is responsible for strengthening civic pride and cultural stability through neighborhood conservation. A lot was brought up about history. I'd have to argue we bring the history to Livingston, actually. A lot of these people live through it. Cultural stability is strengthened by providing housing choices to older adults with disabilities who have lived in this area their entire lives. Currently, there's a problem across the country of not providing housing options to elderly people with disabilities that allows them to remain near friends, family, and social structures. Instead, they have few options but try to get care they need at home, which has been brought up in the past. This is something that is unaffordable and for many and can result in unforeseen negative consequences like loneliness, isolation, and depression. And there's also studies that show negative health consequences as well. Or to move in a big, large assisted living facility in an entirely different neighborhood or unfamiliar part of town. By allowing the proposed use here, older residents can get the care they need in a residentially scaled home near family and friends. Integrating aging seniors into the residential life leads to cultural stability. It's better for the seniors and the younger generations who benefit from their continued love and wisdom. Removing the elderly population, which is essentially what we're discussing today, from our daily lives or from this particular district in assisted living is a modern invention. The MLHPD was put in place to protect, enhance, and perpetuate the district's historical, cultural, social, economic, political, and architectural identity. In the 1800s, when the buildings of this district were built, elders were respected. They were cared for in home environments where they could interact with family and friends, worship, shop, and otherwise engage in the daily life. It was only later that our elderly were forced out of familiar areas into more appropriately zoned parts of town, which I'd like to point out, this is a commercial district. This lessens the strong societal ties between generations, making so many young people today, sometimes they're never exposed to the history and wisdom that comes from these generations, not just buildings. Allowing this assisted living home that allows elderly residents with disabilities to stay in a home environment in this important area honors the historic cultural values that the district was enacted to protect. In addition to stimulating the economy, we're bringing families out here and spheres of influence as well. I'd also like to point out that, procedurally, the certificate of appropriateness, we followed the what it says in the ordinance. We are absolutely in compliance with that. We submitted that to Scott Weeks, which is how it's supposed to go. The building, they're saying this looks modern. We worked in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration for 10 months. We made every revision that was given to us, so anything new is just something we're hearing of for the first time in 10 months. Reducing property values, that is one of many articles. I would argue that this does not reduce property values, and a example that we can look at in our area is Whittington. So if you're familiar with the new development Whittington, it's luxury homes, some north of $1 million. Sunnybrook Estates is in the entrance. You literally pass it and see it as you pull into Whittington. It does not deter families from purchasing and investing in Whittington. The cemetery, we took that into consideration. There's a lot of natural trees, but there is landscaping for that. Mr. Watson says it's not a fancy boarding house. And last meeting, he said that as well and described the attributes of these individuals, the care that they do require. We call them, it's called the Oaks Residence, but really that's like our branding because it preserves the dignity of these individuals. We're not going to call them disabled, elderly. Nobody wants to be called that. We call them residents to make them feel valued and cared for as they should. The Blake is another example we can look at. It's in a lively commercial zone. I think they're having a jazz fest, or they had one last weekend right in that area of the Blake. To suggest that we should put them out in the middle of nowhere, that's not, something we agree with. We think they should be within close proximity to the ice cream shop and the Mexican restaurant and the gatherings, which I find are very, very family friendly. Seaport REI is the LLC, and it is on the certificate of appropriateness that is applying with our names. The admission agreement. So we can't just come up with an admission agreement out of the air. The admission agreement is heavily regulated by the Mississippi State Department of Health, and they must have trouble with one or more activities of daily living to live in our house. So no, not anyone can come, like a hotel or apartment or condominium. It's not comparable. These people have to have trouble with one or more activities of daily living, which we've defined throughout. It could be getting dressed, bathing, grooming, transporting from here to there, walking, etc. And I think that's all I had. I think what it comes down to is, MLHPD did state their clear intent, and this is their language, our clear intent is to prohibit group living quarters. This is a different category. It is not an apartment, it's not a condo, it is assisted living, and I think it's was synonymous with, are we going to exclude elderly who require assisted living from this community? And I would hope that we would include them and celebrate them.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I think after all has been said and done of everything that we've looked at, the only argument is this a residential facility in a commercial zone, or is this a commercial enterprise in a commercial zone? This use does not meet the definitions of a residential facility in a commercial zone. It is not a boarding house, certainly not a condominium, it's not a rental unit. It's a facility, a medical facility for the care of people. Whether or not the activity of the rest of Livingston will impact negatively that facility is not our decision. Pretty much testimony has proven that this facility will not negatively impact the atmosphere of Livingston. Livingston and its success depends on traffic. That restaurant is out of business due to the lack of traffic. This facility will bring traffic to the area. Not much, but some. So our job is, does this request as a conditional use meet the guidelines? And I am of the belief that it does, because it is not a residential facility in a commercial zone. It's a care facility. For that reason, I make a motion that this conditional use, as presented to us, be approved.
Is there a second?
There is a site plan attached to that too.
That the site plan as presented to us be approved.
Second.
It's been motion and properly second that it be approved. All in favor?
Can I put a condition on one of them?
That'd be a substitute motion.
I'd like to do
Sure.
that. If we're moving in that direction, it would be conditional to any further plans requiring review and approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission if we were to move forward. And that would specifically be any other buildings, any other prospects of growing your business, however way that you plan to do so. That's the only way that I would feel comfortable. And to add to what she said, I mean, I've referenced it 3 or 4 times today that this is the 21st time I think I've seen you guys, that, you know, so, and if you'll recall, I was the one that denied it the first time. I have to go within very certain specifications, and I can't go on emotions, and I can't go on what people prefer and what they don't. I have guidelines that I have to review and I have to meet, and the way that it works next, as you're familiar, is it will be moved to the Board of Supervisors, where they can also take another review of our suggestions. I've reviewed everything that the MLHP has presented, and I would just like to say how much I appreciate for the passion that you have for the community and for all the work you've given that you don't get necessarily paid to do, and for the many residents of that community that have come out and, you know, discussed their concerns. But from what I've read today, and everyone in this room knows I've asked a lot of questions, and I've referenced our attorney. I have to move with my condition of approval, and then let it move to the Board of Supervisors for further review after that.
There's a second to the substitute motion.
Second.
It's been properly motioned and second. All in favor? Ayes have it, so it is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
5-0.
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
And just to make sure I'm clear, it's subject to, for the future, subject to meeting the standards of the
Supervisor.
LHPD?
No.
No, any further development, any further buildings, anything would go through the same process that you've got here. Your property is zoned conditional use, or assuming that this is finalized, that's what was just approved here today. But any further buildings or development or uses will come back through the same process.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to close public hearing.
So motioned.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion for a meeting, the third Tuesday in May, 16th. May 16th. Motion.
So moved.
Properly second.
Wait a
All in
minute,
favor?
I'm sorry, who made that motion?
Me.
Mandy, and who seconded?
I will. Amanda.
I'm going to call y'all thing 1 and thing 2 or something. Mandy and Amanda's too close together.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.